Good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to our next in the series of talks on the works of mercy. I am just so privileged and delighted to introduce our speaker this evening, Dominica Pecoraro, and she is the Diocesan Refugee Officer. We work closely together, collaborate through the Refugee Project Board. We've had a whole week of events, and I have to say that I know how hard you've worked today, Dominica, and that you've come and done this for us this evening. I'm so eternally grateful. But there's no other week in the year when we could possibly not talk about Welcome the Stranger. So Dominica is going to speak to us about the works of mercy and how we can welcome the stranger in this week, which is all about Refugee Week, but particularly it's about compassion is the theme of Refugee Week this year. And so thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking us tonight. Over to you.
Thank you, Canon Emma. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to talk about a community of compassion and what it takes to enact compassion in our everyday life. As Canon Emma just mentioned, it is Refugee Week. And you may be puzzled, as I am, when I hear that Refugee Week is a celebration. Celebration of what? I sometimes wonder. Please, I invite you to step inside my heart, and I will tell you the reasons for I do celebrate Refugee Week. Let's face it, Refugee Week is hard work. As Canon Emma said, we just ended a 3 days event at the wonderful chapter house. And this is on top of our everyday work, managing projects and serving refugees, serving our community. For most people we serve, those in need of international protection, Refugee Week can be tricky to handle, as it fingers the chord between gratitude and guilt. What are we celebrating then? Being forced to live one sense of self, memories of home life, friends, family, and one's job behind. Or maybe we celebrate living in a hostile country where all you are as a refugee and bring feels out of place, not needed, and certainly not wanted. I think that with Refugee Week, we celebrate life, hope, despite all of this. Refugee Week offers us a chance to reconnect with our common humanity and forces us to hang on what good there is in us as humans, as spiritual beings. Our collective power to survive and strive despite war, droughts, famine, abuse, anger, loneliness, and the nationality and borders bill. So you might have with you something, a booklet called A Community of Compassion. Community of Compassion toolkit offers us not only an opportunity to publicize, raise awareness on the projects that Jonathan leads with the Social Justice Network, focusing on the work with refugees. You will see in the booklet 5 ways to respond. The toolkit is rooted into prayer. So the first act, we invite people to consider is to pray. And there are spiritual resources in there. There is a whole resource for faith leaders, how to address a congregation, maybe on Sunday, during Refugee Sunday, or maybe beyond Refugee Week, beyond Refugee Sunday. We heard that it's very difficult for people to connect with the stories of those who have sought sanctuary, who are seeking sanctuary, and to understand why do people open their hearts and mind to them? Why? With this theological reflection resource, we are inviting everyone to step inside the work, the heart and the minds of those people who make us a community of compassion. You will see testimonies from faith leaders who have provided sanctuary, and also testimonies from those who have been offered sanctuary. The third thing you will find is a myth busting with loads of wonderful questions I've been asked throughout the years serving the diocese. I've been in post for 7 years, so believe me, I kind of heard it all. What do we do to respond? Before I tell you the projects that we have put into place to respond to the needs of our diverse community, I would like to give you an update on the situation in Kent. So what is Kent facing at the moment? And I had my wonderful colleague at Kent County Council sharing her update with me. So what we're looking at, it's something that's called refugee resettlement in Kent. So those are safe routes for people to arrive here. People can arrive by crossing the channel, by plane. Those are spontaneous arrivals. And then we have other kind of arrivals, and they arrive through government-led schemes, such as resettlement schemes. And we have, you will be confused, I apologize, but that is, those are the wealth of schemes provided by the government for people to safely arrive in the UK. So we have the Syrian Vulnerable Person Resettlement Scheme that is specifically set up to help Syrians who had to escape the Syrian conflict back in 2011. Then we have the Afghan ARAP and ACRS, which is the Afghan Resettlement Policy. And then we have the Homes for Ukraine. Okay, so let's talk about the Vulnerable Person Relocation Scheme, VPRS, and United Kingdom Resettlement Scheme, UKRS. What's the situation in Kent? VPRS is in operation in Kent since 2015 and settled vulnerable refugees, nearly all Syrians, and it closed in February 2021 when the new scheme called UK Resettlement Scheme came into place. However, it is still working with families who are within their 5 years of support, because 5 years is the length of support that local authorities get for those families. The UKRS, United Kingdom Resettlement Scheme, took over from the VPRS in 2021. It is almost identical, but it's got a global reach. So with that scheme, now we have people coming from Sudan, from Eritrea, it has, from Kenya, it has expanded. Families who are resettled under both schemes, they have indefinite leave to remain, and that means that they have the rights to work and also the same right to access healthcare and public services. So far, nearly 600 individuals are settled in Kent under those two schemes. But as I said, nearly all Syrian, but some other nationalities are also getting into Kent through that. You all know what happened in the summer of 2021, especially in August, with the invasion of Afghanistan from the Taliban regime. And we know that the UK government has been very generous, allowing those who served with the UK military to find safety in the UK. We had the first group what came under a scheme called ARAP, and those were Afghans who worked with the British government and the government is now providing them support for 3 years. And then we have the Afghan ACRS, Afghan Citizen Resettlement Scheme, and that assists a wider group of vulnerable at-risk Afghans, and support is provided to them for 3 years, indefinite leave to remain. The government has said that within 5 years, in 2021, that within 5 years they would resettle 20,000 Afghans. Families resettled under both schemes have full rights to work, like for the previous schemes, rent, access benefits and public services. And the number of families settled in Kent are now about 300 people, and numbers are likely to increase as the deadline for hotel closures nears. You may know that in Kent there are 3 bridging hotels. Bridging hotels are hotels where families from Afghanistan moved because of those schemes are temporarily staying. Temporarily, most families have been in hotels for over 2 years. In Kent we have 3 hotels, 2 in Canterbury and 1 in Ashford. However, now it's in the news, the government has put into place a new policy, therefore there's going to be a closure of all bridging hotels by the end of August. And so there is such an urge for these families to find their own independent accommodations. Or the other option would be to make themselves homeless. Then we have the Homes for Ukraine. We all know what happened and what's happening in Ukraine. And Kent has been very generous. Actually, at the moment, Kent County Council is the most generous county across the UK to offer sanctuary to Ukrainians. To date, we have 4,426 Ukrainian guests who have applied to reside within 1,798 Kent homes under the scheme, and since March 2022, Kent has welcomed 3,518 guests into 1,519 homes, and we are still receiving guests on a weekly basis. We as Diocese have played a small part, but a part. We resettled 40 people through the scheme. Initially, the hosting agreement was for a period of up to 6 months, but this has now been extended up to 2 years. That means that hosting families or individuals will still have a thank you payment from the Department of Levelling Up. And the scheme's focus is now on long-term sustainable accommodation to ensure that people live an independent life until they are ready to leave the country. However, they have a 3-year visa to remain. This is an update about people who stay, people who go back to Ukraine. To date, 2,028 guests have left the scheme, with 52% moving into private rented accommodation and 32% have returned to Ukraine. Kent County Council are working with district councils to support guests to move from a hosting arrangement into a private rented accommodation. I have to say that we work with Kent County Council a lot, and we have secured several accommodations to people coming either from Afghanistan or from Syria already. And KCC are now offering financial support from the funding stream to districts, and are offering support with purchasing necessary items for families to move into their own homes. There is no competition, but also the diocese is offering, because we've been very lucky with the bid with the Church Urban Fund, and we also offer support for people to buy home items when they move on into independent accommodations. That's it. So that's the first update. The second thing I would love to talk to you about, and then maybe it's too much, you don't want to hear any more of my Italian accent. Let's see. I treasure this opportunity to talk to you about something called community sponsorship. I'm not sure how many of you know what community sponsorship is. So, community sponsorship is a community-led welcome scheme that the government offers to groups, to resettled refugee families. At the moment, there is something called Pathway 2, and the government has agreed that community sponsorship groups can also now offer support to people who have to move from hotels. So not only relocating someone from a refugee camp or from an unsafe area, but also for people who are already here, they need that additional support. This is what we're going to talk about. So I will talk about something about a map. Then I will talk about how it works and how justice shines through community sponsorship. And then you will have my contacts. Okay, so born with a map. Most people are born with a map. It is a gift given by our family. It helps to clear your way, make you aware of the faults, and guide you through the right path. Sometimes it helps you to bring someone back on the right path. These maps that guided generations over generations to overcome obstacles, nurture the future, and navigate life inside out have no use when people cross borders. Families who are forced to flee from their homes leave their maps behind. Community sponsorship groups donate their maps to help others find their feet again. And at the moment, there are 19 Church of England community sponsorship groups in the UK. We should do more. And I happen to be, for the church, the national representative for community sponsorship. And my task is to grow the scheme in our church. Jonathan, do you think we could show a clip?
Yeah, hopefully.
So let's see if the sound works, okay? Let's try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay, let's see.
ما كنا متوقعين كنا عم نفكر انه لا نوصل لا نشوف حدا ما بنعرف، يعني ما بنعرف ناس جايين على بلد ما بنعرف فيها حدا، يعني لا في اصدقاء لا في اهل لا في شيء، بس يعني الحمد لله وقت شفناكم انه كثير ارتحنا.
Community sponsorship is a wonderful opportunity for us to be actively involved in bringing a family who are at a time of distress and displacement to arrive safely, come on a safe and route to England and to come to a place of refuge and safety for them. And involves that community staying with that family for a period of time of around about 2 years to get to know that family and to not only bring them here but to help them settle in and become part of the local community. It's working really well with the joint programme between the Roman Catholic group and the Anglican groups within this area. It helps us to fulfil what we see as one of our main reasons for why we're doing this, which is to fulfil the gospel imperative of welcoming the stranger into our midst. Personally, I think the most important thing about community sponsorship is that it's a group, because the group supports each other and it supports itself, it supports the family. Is there any update on education, how things are going at school?
I think it's doing very well at school, yeah.
The lead sponsor within that group holds the group together.
The whole group has gelled really well, so we all offer each other support and there's a real can-do attitude. So within the team we've got myself, who's a retired GP, we've got retired teachers, we've got someone who volunteers for citizen advice who's helped us with the benefit side of things, we've got someone in finance who helps the family manage budgets, and we've got a couple of translators.
Sometimes I feel that they're teaching us, me personally, more than really I'm teaching them.
I'm incredibly proud of the fact that our two denominations are working together.
I think if another group wanted to do this, I would thoroughly encourage them. I think the essential thing for them is to make sure that they've got a group of 7 or 8 people who are fully committed to welcoming a family for a period of time into this country, because that's the essential bit to make it work successfully. And then to go for it, because the sheer privilege and joy of being able to work with each other and to work with the Home Office and with the family, for a family to be able to arrive here and to be able to come here and live safely is such a joy and such a privilege for all of us.
So that is a bit about community sponsorship. I just would like to take this opportunity to explain very briefly how it works. So we need to form a group, and churches with their congregations are ideal places because there is already a bonding of trust, and families who arrive are going through unimaginable situations, they find a community that it's already there. And then you need to allocate responsibilities. So as Diane said, from Guildford Diocese, we need someone who's going to lead, someone who's going to be good at finding jobs, someone who's good at understanding how the education system works, everything that people are capable of doing, because you have the maps, you have been doing this all your life. And then you need to apply to the Home Office. That can be a bit trickier. However, there are people helping you all the way. There is Reset, and Reset is a charity financed by the Home Office. to do this work. And then there is myself and other people who can help. And at this stage, you can apply in principle. So then there is the fundraising bit, £9,000. I had the opportunity to put together a survey for a Church of England groups, and 99% of those groups say that it's been easier for them to fundraise. Some people have done that with the Sunday collections, a couple of Sundays collections, or sometimes more than a couple of Sundays collections, but some people have organized communities, so bake sales, and then you need to find a home. As I said, people who are coming here through these schemes, they have the right to rent and they have the right to housing benefits, so they will be paid for that home, but the group will need to find them a home that they can rent for at least 2 years. And this is something that community sponsorship groups within the church have found quite tricky, and 75% say that it's tricky, but it is possible. And then the family arrives and the group is contracted by this application with the Home Office to walk the family into interdependence for 1 year. And 100% of groups I've been talking to have found this experience hugely transformative. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to come and stand by you.
Thank
for
you, Pamela.
Yeah, I need to stand by you for the microphone. Thank you so much. Now, there's an opportunity to ask Dominica questions. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, the floor is yours.
Obviously, you're trying to house quite a lot of people. Do you have problems in finding suitable housing?
Yes.
How did you kind of deal with that?
So, there is no right answer. It's tricky. It's tricky, and there is a possibility. It is tricky, but it's doable. The government has offered local authorities generous amount of money to help families coming from Afghanistan to find accommodations and employment. The tricky bit is to find an accommodation that is within the housing benefit cap and allowance, but, and this is where the community of compassion comes in, there are very generous landlords who would keep a steady income for their properties, but maybe they will lose £100 a month for rent. But what is £100 compared to providing a home, and still not really losing money? We work a lot with KCC and with the City Council to help people find accommodation. And for example, my talk is an example. But what we offer as diocese, we offer different programs for people. And so we have a welcome hub for Ukrainian families and UK hosts. And we do casework there once a week with a charity called Canterbury for Ukraine, and we are at the Umbrella Centre, and that project is funded by Kent County Council. And we provide awareness raising on how the system works in the UK in terms of housing, education, the NHS, and so on. Then we have an Afghan drop-in for Afghan ladies in a local church, and there we offer conversational English opportunities, and we just finished a 7 weeks program of healing through the arts. So we did conversation through the arts. Then we have an employment and English service from another church, always in Canterbury, and we serve resettled families. And the last thing, we work into schools. We have a program called Voices of Welcome that will just finish at Archbishop School in a couple of weeks. And we work with children coming from a diverse background, also from forced displacement background, to enable the school to become even more a place of welcome, but moreover for children to make friends across cultures. So we can't do it all, but we do what we can. Thank you. Yes.
The community support group sound wonderful. That's 8 or 9 people working with one family.
Yes.
And there must be hundreds, thousands of families who
Yes.
benefit. So how are the families paired up or chosen?
So the process is this. In refugee camps, there is United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and they do the casework, and they refer people for the global resettlement routes. And some are referred to the UK. And they go on this vast database that the Home Office manages. When the group puts an application forward, what happens is that the Home Office will assess the evaluation, and they will look for a suitable family, given the assessment of the evaluation, what the group can offer to a certain family, and what kind of housing the group can offer to a family. Families are selected upon vulnerability criteria. So we have victims of violence, victims of people who have been gone through traumatic experience, have been jailed, have been violated. We have children at risk of trafficking, we have women at risk of trafficking, and we have people with medical needs. However, nothing is imposed on the group. Once the family that's deemed suitable by the Home Office is identified, then they will be offered to the group. The group will discuss with, let's say in Kent, they will discuss it with the local authority and with the county council, because we are a 2-tier county. So the decision needs to be made according to what KCC and the local authority approve in terms of whether or not we can respond to the needs of this family. If the group thinks that the family is not the right family for them, they can refuse. And another family will be offered to them. And just a few months ago, the Home Office is now offering some sorts of contacts between the sponsoring group and the family before arrival, so that there is a kind of communication there already before coming. How the family is chosen, it's really upon what the group can offer and on the size of the property. So if you find a property that is a 1-bedroom flat, then you might be allocated a couple or a single person. If you can offer a 5-bedroom, I don't know, like a vicarage, then you will be offered a family, a larger family. If you put in the application that you are happy to apply some modification to the property to respond to the needs of someone with medical needs, then you would be allocated a family that has got someone with medical needs. If you can give me some feedback, I don't know if you can have a look at the myth-busting resource. Is that something that you have ever wondered? There is something that's called the myth-bust in your toolkit. So those are one of the, so there are some questions that I've been asked over and over again throughout the years, and I And Jonathan and I thought it was good just to group them up into an interesting document. So the first question that I get asked is, asylum seekers and refugees are just two terms referring to scroungers arriving in the UK, aren't they? So, for example, something simple like the difference between someone who seeks asylum and someone who's been granted asylum it can be very confusing to the general public. Did you know the difference between, I'm not judging you, yes, I'm not here to judge, but have you ever wondered whether there is a difference between seeking asylum and being granted asylum? So this is something that, for example, I really hope that this myth busting will help you with. This one is my favorite. Are all asylum seekers illegal immigrants? What do you think? I mean, the thing is, so far, seeking asylum is not a crime, it's a human right. And it's something that I treasure, because maybe not us, maybe my daughter, maybe my granddaughter or my grandson will not live in a country where there is peace and wealth. Who knows? And my hope is that the right to seek asylum will still be with them. The right for them to move to a safe country and to find a community that welcomes them. Our country is an island, and the only way for people to seek asylum is to arrive in the UK. And the way people arrive in the UK, it's not something that when you flee from a desperate situation where your life is at risk, maybe you lost your family, maybe you lost your children, you lost yourself. It's something that you can decide. You want to get your family and yourself to safety. And getting on those wonderful resettlement programs has got the same likelihood of winning the lottery. So there is very little choice for the millions of people who are in need of international protection. When I read the updated figure of 89.3 million people who have been forced to migrate because of war, famine, drought, or persecution, I was frozen. Okay, you see those figures. This is a fun one. To the UK, when we are all a small island after all. The thing is, I'm just coming back from an annual meeting of practitioners from different denominations working with refugees, and I went to Budapest. It is, I'm telling you, we're not the only one who are facing this crisis. It's a global crisis, and it needs a global response. 72% of people who are forced to flee are hosted in neighboring countries. And there is a very small percentage in the UK. I think the last count was 0.1%. And those are the countries where most people seeking asylum come from. So we have the Syrian Arab Republic, Venezuela, Myanmar, and 31% of others. I'm now dealing with a case of a young girl. She's 19. and she of a minority tribe in South Sudan, and she cannot. Her family is in a refugee camp in Uganda, and she cannot go back home. However, people question why is she seeking asylum. With the new Nationality and Borders Act, the way people reach the UK will profoundly compromise whether or not they will be eligible for asylum. The asylum process will, if they come by boat, if they don't come from all the resettlement schemes aforementioned, they cannot claim asylum in the UK. Their asylum claim will be processed outside of the UK, Rwanda, and if granted asylum, they will stay in the country outside the UK. I think this is very dangerous, as beyond being a country, as human beings, because we could be in that situation in 3-4 decades, but if we leave the Human Rights Convention, we cannot benefit from the same rights people would benefit facing a war situation. And the UK was the first signatory of the Human Rights Convention for Refugees in 1951. We were the first. This is the last one, but I need to say that. Isn't it true, Dominica, I'm asked, that people who seek asylum in the UK are unqualified and come here to scrape up on our welfare state? Well, you may be surprised to know that we have over 1,200 medically qualified refugees, and you not because if you're qualified you have more rights to seek asylum than others, but this is a misconception that people come here and are completely unskilled. And asylum seekers cannot work. Did you know that people seeking asylum do not have the rights to work? And they have just over £5 a day to live on. Today, with the end of the 3-day event at Canterbury Cathedral, I realized how much vulnerable those people seeking asylum are in the hands of people who might enslave them. Because they have no rights to work, but still they have a right to life. Here in Canterbury, for example, I work with a lady, a husband, they have 5 children, and they are seeking asylum. £5 a day, 5 kids, from 15 to 5. At some point, the husband will need to find some sort of income, but it's not allowed. So he is very vulnerable to predators. Okay. And then there is you, the community of compassion, the community of justice, because if it doesn't come from us, it won't come from anywhere at the moment. And you are the people who inspire me every day. So thank you. Thank you for being here. It's hot. I got this Italian accent, and yes, tell me if you want to ask me questions, tell me. Yes.
You mentioned human rights a lot.
Yes.
Have you worked with or had any connections with Amnesty International?
No.
Okay.
I have connection with the Kent branch of Amnesty International. But when I go to Amnesty International in London, because they have their office in Shoreditch, it's mainly to events, but there isn't a connection. unless they have some sorts of advocacy work or they need to lobby for someone who needs protection. I would love to.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
I think governments will be forced to change the rules about asylum seekers being prevented from seeking work.
Yes.
But let's leave that to one side. Can I raise the very difficult question of climate refugees?
Absolutely.
I hesitated to mention this afternoon because there's a wonderful atmosphere of optimism with everyone doing whatever they could, even if it was small steps. And to hear Ben and Daniel Marsh and the family, my colleague actually, my friend, was wonderful. So I hesitated to mention it, I must mention it, which is, I was reading the book by Guy and Vince, which you may know, called No Man's Century. And in that book, this is the prediction for the next 30 years. This is what's going to take us up to 2050. And she predicts, and this is based on UN statistics, that the number of climate refugees across the world will rise to 1.2 billion by 2050. We cannot stop this, it's already happening. Now, you've talked about famine and violence and civil war and persecution. Now, actually, climate change is causing these things to happen in Africa. They're not separate things, are they?
No.
Climate change is not isolated from the breakdown of civil society or of political conflict. And actually, I mean, I'm a historian and I've seen, one of the few reasons I can actually have the energy to approach this at all, because it's tough, actually, is by looking at, what's been happening to human society over the last 500, even 1,000 years. And the church has that very long view, the capacity to take a very long view. We can, New Testament teaches us an awful lot. But I mean, this has been happening over a long period of history, but it's destined to get very much worse, is my point. So climate refugees, this is a flow which we can predict. And all these systemic changes that you've described, it's very good that these are now being put in place. Governments may be forced to put them in place, but there will have to be global solutions. And I'll make this my last sentence. Guy predicts that the UN will have to manage the resettlement of this huge number of climate refugees, and they will be moving from the equatorial countries to the polar regions. I mean, we know that this. So, I mean, we've got to prepare ourselves for these colossal questions, and we'll do it. We will cope, but it's going to be an uphill struggle.
Thank you so much. What's her name?
Gaia.
Gaia. Thank you, Gaia.
Gaia Vince, V-I-N-C-E. And she's written two important books. I think the first is called...
no, your name.
Sorry?
Your name.
My name?
Yes.
Yes.
Just yes, you're given... David. Thank you, David.
I'm just a historian. But Gaia Vince has written these two books. The first is Encountering the Anthropocene, and the second, Nomad Century.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. And I will definitely include the climate change issue clearly next time. I did talk about drought and famine to touch on that, but this should have been made clear. Thank you, David. Yes.
I was interested. You mentioned that asylum seekers are not allowed to work. It's a great incentive for them to do so. What happens if they do work? Effectively, I guess that would be seen as illegal under the UK immigration regulation. What tends to happen to them in practice if they're found to be working?
My understanding is that it will impact on their asylum decision.
And
negatively.
Employs them, very possibly.
They cannot work. They're not permitted to work. So basically, asylum seekers receive something that's called BRP, which is their identity documents, and at the back it's specified whether one is permitted or not permitted to work. And so usually when you are employed with all the rules and regulations, your employer will ask you for an identification document to verify whether you are allowed or not to work. If you're an asylum seeker, unfortunately this is not going to happen, and this is when we see the car wash and the modern slavery and exploitation and servitude and drug factories and all that joy that comes with that. It will claim, my understanding is that it will impact negatively on their asylum application.
That's another pretty. There's this process you mentioned about closing hotels with.
Yes.
What's in practice is going to happen to the people who are affected by that? So they're going to have to move out in August. Quite a short time to fail to find alternatives.
Yes.
Supply.
Local authorities are working very hard and contracted agencies to find these people accommodations. There are some interlinked issues here at stake, because sometimes also people they might decline an offer of a property as well. So it works both ways. Yes. And I just want to say that there is something that is happening in parallel here. There is closure of the Afghan hotels with hundreds of thousands of pounds poured into local authorities to find people accommodation. And there is also the opening of contingency asylum accommodations across the UK. The government a few months ago has established and put a new policy into place where local authorities are going to be informed of an asylum accommodation within their local authority area, but they cannot, won't be asked consent.
Right, so they kind of have to find somebody accommodation even if they don't know what it is. Yeah.
They basically, the Home Office can put up hotels wherever. Yes.
If I mentioned what this was established, for example.
Please, John.
I've got a repeated. So this is with Data Refugee Services report. There's one thing I put into it as well very quickly, this bit of paper, because there's one thing that Chair is very keen on, I think Dominica you're keen on as well, is that members of Parliament should be made aware of what happened at No Care. And there's a bit of paper here saying there's one thing anyone can do, which is email your member of Parliament, ask them whether they've read this report, and encourage anyone else you can to do the same. I put some suggestions, but it's quite important the request is limited to saying, have you read the report? Because if you say, I'm horrified about the refugee situation or something, you'll get a few pre-drafted paragraphs back. If you ask the MP, have you actually read it, and press that point, then MPs are going to have to read this. And I think we then have to read things to the Holy Ghost to prick their consciences to saying this sort of thing must not be allowed to happen. But can I just urge on you to look at this, and as I say, please, and it doesn't matter if an MP gets 20 or 30 emails from people saying, have you read it? The more emails they get, the better, because the more convinced they're going to be this is going to cost them votes at the general election. And if you don't know any follow the opinion polls, but most Conservative MPs who've got majorities of less than 15,000 are now terrified about what will happen, and they are not going to send silly answers back. They're going to say, who will read it? So please, I encourage you to look at this, but also do everything you can to encourage getting the report to MPs.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Well, Dominica, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I found it really illuminating, because obviously a lot of us we only get our facts and figures from what we see on the television, and to have the real background, understanding and knowledge of what's really happening on the ground, and you've presented it so beautifully for us, and I personally love your Italian accent.
Thank you,
yeah. So thank you, Jo. Thank you.
Thank you.
So and the other thing I wanted to say is that I had never heard of community sponsorship before. So when I heard your talk this afternoon, I kind of went, ooh, in a kind of little ooh sort of way that I do, a bit like Piglet, jumped up and down a few minutes, and I thought, gosh, what if we became the 20th? So if anyone else this evening has had a little ooh feeling and would like to just have a chat with me and Dominica and see what we could do, because I think that's what's crucial about things like that, about your toolkit and about what happened this afternoon in Refugee Week, is because very quickly we can become overwhelmed by what we hear and what we see, and feel incapacitated, that we can't actually have any agency over this. But what you have beautifully shown and inspired is that we can actually, each in our own way, welcome the stranger. It really is something that we can do, particularly here in Kent. So thank you so much, Dominica. Thank you. Shall we just give her a Next week we're coming on to visit the prisoner, and we've got the wonderful Nick Ash, who is the chaplain at Elmley Prison on the Isle of Sheppey. So he's going to be with us next week, so do come along for that, and that will be at 6:30. So as Jo has mentioned, the Jesuit Refugee Service has also produced these prayer cards, which is a very lovely prayer on it. So I thought it'd be really nice if I just read this prayer to close our evening today. Lord Jesus, give us courage to accompany others, for in walking at their side, we find you there present with us. Give us joy that we might serve others, for in tending wounds to those who suffer, we sense your healing grace at work in us. Give us wisdom as we advocate for others, for in defending the downtrodden, we hear your voice speak up for us. Grant that in all we do, we may give you glory, Lord. We return all we have in love to you, for you have given everything to us. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dominica, and thank you,
Jonathan,
who is, as you know, the director of the Social Justice Network, who works very closely with Dominica and
my boss.
do amazing stuff in the diocese. We give thanks and pray for you every day. So next week it is Visit the Prisoner. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.